edition of the NBA Outlet Preview Series, presented by OTGBasketball.com. Follow OTG on Twitter at OTG Basketball. I'm your host, Nick Fay. Joining us again, Matthew Handel. What's up, Matt?
What's up, Nick? Thanks for having me again. My pleasure.
No problem. Always nice to have you on the show. Harris, as always, what's up, man?
How's it going, Matt, Nick? It's great to get down to the top three tonight in our preview series. Again, want to thank all the fans and the support that we've gotten. It's been real amazing and great to see all the support from writers, from staff members, from fans of the show. So I want to thank you for that. Let's dive into it tonight. Number 3, the San Antonio Spurs.
Spurs coming at number 3. This is something that we're all used to. Spurs are always a top team in this league. I think me and Matthew were talking about it before the pod. You know, for almost like the last 20 years, they've been a successful franchise. Pop hasn't had a losing season since he joined mid-year. So Spurs back where they belong, top 3. I think it's a fair ranking. What about you guys?
Yep, number 3. Obviously, if you look, you're going to – 99.9% of people are going to say that it's Cavs, Warriors, top of their respective conferences. And then you have a couple teams below them that you can kind of scramble around. But I'm still going to stick with the Spurs as the third best team. So I like our ranking here.
Yeah, this one is a no-brainer. The song "All I Do Is Win" was actually about Greg Popovich. He's won over 50 games, with the exception of like a couple lockout seasons. Oh wait, they went 50-16 in the lockout season. So he's just an all-time great winner. And I spoke about this the other day with one of my friends about people that change franchises' fortunes. And like you get a great combination of a player coach like Brady, Belichick. Obviously, Joe Torre, Derek Jeter. Like sometimes you just get lucky and you get a special combination. And now I want to shout out Tim Duncan for a sensational NBA career, a guy that everybody respects. He didn't wear a suit once, I don't think. He just did it his way and stayed out of the endorsement. And that's kind of like what every Spur is like. It's very black and white. So shout out to Tim Duncan and a player that changed the fortune of a franchise. Now, Magic Johnson did that with the Lakers. Larry Bird did that with the Celtics. The list goes on and on. Jordan with the Bulls, Kobe with the Lakers again, and then, LeBron obviously with the Cavs. But there's a player that comes along to change the fortune of a franchise. This team tanked in 1997 to get Tim Duncan, 5 finals later and a couple of trips to the finals later, and this is one of the most successful organizations in the history of professional sports.
Yeah, I think they mentioned this on 2K when you're playing. I think if the Spurs finish with 14 more wins than the Lakers, they'll go down as the most winningest franchise at the moment.
And really, if going back to what you said, Harris, about Timmy D, if you pulled 100 people randomly that knew, anything about the NBA, you're not really going to have one or two maybe that would say anything bad about him. Like you said, he kind of did it his way. He was the ultimate, professional. And I think that so many careers, if you're going to start a franchise off, like trying to get back to the winning ways, he's, the prototypical kind of professional that you want.
Yeah, exactly. He's a professional on and off the court. Shout out to Tim Duncan for a great career. I'm sure the Spurs fans will miss him, but let's talk about this offseason. They obviously lost Duncan, but they did they added some nice pieces. In the draft, they drafted Dejounte Murray. What do you guys think about him?
I think that, if you look at some of the young players that come into the Spurs, like we talked about, Greg Popovich just has a way, and the Spurs franchise in general, they just have a way of, transforming young players. Kawhi kind of is a prime example of that. He's been transformed into the player he's now. And I think that, Murray's going to have a great opportunity to learn from, players, coaches, just the franchise in general. So it'll be interesting to see how he can benefit from, being drafted by the Spurs.
I have a very close friend of mine, shout out to Kyle Hunt, who I worked with the last 2 summers at basketball camps, that played in the D-League with the Spurs and also is roommates with Jonathan Simmons in the D-League, who is now a mainstay with the Spurs. And what he talks about a lot is the way that the franchise is run. Their D-League team is basically going to be run and a lot of D-League teams are like this. Their NBA is going to be run exactly like the NBA team. The reason why the Spurs are great is because they find guys that no one else really wants. Manu Ginobili was a second-round pick in 1999. Tony Parker was a 28th pick of the first round. Those are two of the best value draft picks of all time. These guys are both Hall of Famers, in my opinion. So you look at the way they develop their young talent and the way they develop players in the D-League and just the way they have a system that's in place with foreign players. And that is why they're as successful as they are today. They've surrounded Timmy D, and now they'll surround Aldridge and Leonard, who, as we talk about Aldridge and Leonard, are two of the nicer players in the league. And now you talk about the draft pick. I have no doubt in my mind they'll get everything and then some out of the guys that out of these guys, out of these younger players.
Well, and Murray, he kind of slipped in the draft. I think he was predicted to go higher, so they got him at 29, so some real nice value. But like we mentioned, they had a pretty good offseason adding players. They picked up Pau Gasol, very good all-around player, very skilled. David Lee, Joel Anthony, Dwayne Dedman. So they did some work on the inside. What do you guys think of the moves? What sticks out to you?
Well, Pau Gasol to me, most obviously. I think on the Bulls pod we did a while back, Harris, you talked about Pau Gasol, and when he left the Bulls, just that was the biggest departure in your mind. I think that, like you said, he's still one of the best passing big men. He can do a lot of things, and I think like we talked about losing Timmy D. I think that Pau Gasol coming in, I mean, there's no way you're not going to notice that Timmy D's gone, but Pau Gasol is going to be really productive in this system, and I think that he was a really, really nice pickup for the Spurs.
This is the smartest team in the NBA. I don't think there's any question. I mean, you go here to get younger. David Lee's going to look younger. David Lee, in 2013, David Lee was in the MVP, like the top 10 in like MVP votes, or like 2012 or something like that. So you're going to see a good David Lee off the bench. You're going to see a lineup at times that features Aldridge, Ginobili, Gasol, Parker, Leonard. This team's going to win 60. I know we'll get into our predictions, but they have veteran winners. This team is going to challenge Golden State, be a lot better challenge than most teams will present to them, and they'll probably get them once in the regular season because of their veteran leadership and their coaching. What was their record? They didn't get Golden State last year at all? They got them once at home, I think.
They might have got them once. Yeah. I know a few times they got blown out. The Spurs, I think, won 67 games.
Yeah, they did, yes. And the Spurs lost one game at home.
Yeah, I mean, and they rested guys, and they rested guys in some of those Warriors games as well. And obviously Pop wasn't trying to show his hand, but
yeah, and then they went up on the Thunder, right? Were they up 2-1 in that series?
Yeah, I think so.
And then they blew that series. So we all wanted to see that Spurs-Warriors matchup. We got the Warriors and Thunder that went 7.
But that was a good series too.
Yeah.
I think the Spurs – touch on Pau Gasol real quick. I think he's an upgrade on offense over Tim Duncan. They obviously missed Duncan's defense. He's one of the most fundamentally sound players who is able to defend at a high level without being super athletic and blocking your shot into the first row. So shout out to him on that. But I think one thing that kind of scares me about the Spurs just a touch going to the season is the way they played against the Thunder in the last few games. Like in the elimination game, they got blown out.
Yeah.
I remember I missed the first half of the game, and I came home, and I saw the score at halftime, and I was like, are you serious? Like, is my phone not right now?
Yeah.
So I
remember being at the gym watching that too, and it was like, this is how Timmy D's going to go out. But it's still like that Thunder team was playing at such a high level, which also speaks volumes to how good Golden State was, because and how good LeBron was in the finals, because the Thunder, they really played incredible in that series.
Yeah, they definitely did. They played their hearts out.
Yeah.
They had everybody playing so hard and so much energy everywhere.
Yeah.
So disappointing that they blew the lead at Golden State, but that's for another day.
Yes.
Let's talk about departures, though, for the Spurs. They did lose. Obviously we said Tim Duncan retired. They lost Boris Diaw, Boban Marjanovic, Kevin Martin, Andre Miller, David West, and Matt Bonner. So they lost some vets. They did add some youth. There were some guys they added we didn't mention. But Diaw, I think they'll miss. What about you guys?
Yeah, Nick, like we talked about off, before the pod, Boris Diaw, he was just, kind of like Pau Gasol, how he's a skilled big man, can pass, can stretch the floor. He moved on to the Jazz. One thing, if I can go back, to an addition, some of those guys we didn't talk about, Bryn Forbes, he was drafted out of Michigan State, under the radar guy, from watching Illinois play in the Big Ten for a while, like I noticed Bryn Forbes, and he can shoot really well. So I think that he might not get a lot of minutes his rookie year, but I think that he might be a guy to look out for. Like we talked about, the Spurs can just grow players. So maybe, keep an eye on Forbes, but Boris Diaw for biggest departure for sure, from my mind.
Yeah, I mean, I think they're going to miss Dial a little bit. He's a really good passer, high veteran IQ guy, but they have enough of those guys. I don't think this roster, you look up and down this roster, I don't think they necessarily miss anything specifically. Are there any really holes in their roster? Because, they have maybe some weakness at the 2 spot, but,
I mean, the front court, you could get a little nervous about defensively. Like,
yeah, I guess so.
How consistent are you going to get? What's the consistency you're going to get out of Dwayne Dedmon and Joel Anthony? Both guys have performed in the past, but are they going to perform for you? We know Pau Gasol, he's solid on defense. He's not amazing. Tim Duncan was very good. Aldridge, he's improving, but still, losing a veteran like David West, Boris Diaw, even Marjanovic, and then Tim Duncan, like, I think they lost some defense and consistency, which would be a little bit scary, but they have the potential to fill it in.
Yeah, because I think if you look at their fours and kind of their big men, they're like David Lee, like you talked about, LaMarcus. I think that they're known more for offense. So I think losing some of those, a couple defensive big men is going to hurt just a little bit. But I don't think it's too big of a hole.
Are the Spurs going to be better or worse this season?
I peg them at just a little bit worse. They won 67 and 15 in last year, so I put them at about 64 and would that be 18. I do think they're still the second seed, so it's kind of like the Trailblazers. We talked about how their record's going to be a little bit different, but I think their seed's going to be the same. So I do think they're going to lose a couple more games, but because last year, like we talked about, Nick, a little bit earlier off the air, I looked at the record online and I was shocked because so much attention was, on the Warriors and the things they were doing. But for the longest time, the Spurs were actually, sticking with them and for that number 1 spot. So I don't think they're going to necessarily have, that amount of hype around them this year. But I do think they'll be the second seed with about 64 wins.
Yeah, the thing is, like I tell people, I don't think the Warriors will win 73 games this year, but I think they'll be more dominant than they were last year, if that makes any sense.
Yeah.
So you don't have to necessarily – your record in the case of these two teams, whether they're better or worse than last year, well, Aldridge is a year better in the system. Leonard is a year older in the system. And now you add Gasol for a younger version of Tim Duncan, obviously not the same player. But I think they might not win 67 games. But I think they could be just as good, if not more dominant than they were last year, which is a kind of a scary thought for Golden State. But just like I think with Golden State, 73 is probably not attainable, but they're going to win games that are going to be over at halftime. So this is one of those situations where because you won 67, yes, it's very difficult, as we know. We saw 2 of the best individual seasons in NBA history in the same year, and these teams matched up with each other 3, maybe 4 times. So I don't think you'll see either of the 2 teams win as many games, but I think you could see the Spurs team be just as good, if not better, than they were last year.
I'm going to go with worse. I think, this team had some turnover. They lost the leadership of Tim Duncan. And, there's been rumors about LaMarcus Aldridge possibly wanting out of San Antonio. So that could cause some issue. I know the Spurs said they're unlikely to trade them unless they're out of title contention, but it's like you guys mentioned, it's 67 games. It's hard to get more wins than that. So I'm going to go with worse.
I do like that. I do like. Sorry about that, Nick, but I do like the point that Harris brought up. If a team like the Warriors or the Spurs, if their record kind of like takes a little bit of a hit, I think you're spot on with that Warriors. I think they're going to be more dominant, like you said, even though the record might not show it. Just because I say that they might lose, 3 more games, I think they'll be, just as good as last year when it comes, not necessarily record wise.
What's your guys' final prediction for the Spurs?
64 and 18 with the 2 seed. The West this year is strange. 1 through 4, not 1 through 4. I'm sorry, 2, 3, and 4, kind of up in the air at this point. I think we can all agree that the Warriors, probably lock that 1 spot up. But as the season goes on, I think that 2, 3, and 4 might switch quite a bit. But at the end of the year, I'm going to go with the Spurs locking up that 2 seed. I think it'll be interesting to see if they can make it to the conference finals. I think it's either them or the Clippers, but they do have a shot at. They do have Thunder, yes. Russ, like you said before, Harris. I'm not getting in his way. I'm not doubting him. So, but the 2 seed going into the playoffs for me.
Yeah, I'm going to say 65, right around that number. That sounds right. Is it October 25th yet? I mean, this matchup at Golden State is going to be really fun. I expect the Warriors to win that ball game. But what an opener. I mean, what an opener. The 2 best teams of last year record-wise get to square off. And, obviously we wanted to see that matchup in the Western Conference Finals. I think that will be the matchup in the Western Conference Finals this year. And I think Golden State will get back to the finals for the 3rd consecutive season. But it's with the Spurs this year, this is a franchise that since they've been in the NBA, since they went from the ABA to the NBA in 77, they've only missed the playoffs 4 times. Yes, that's correct. Since 1977, they have missed the playoffs 4 times. Now, as someone who lives in New York and had supported the Knicks for a while, you can understand the importance of that statistic because the Knicks have gone long stretches without winning 30 games. So this is one of the most consistent franchises in all of sports. I've said it in the beginning of the podcast. I'll say it again. I expect them to be deep in the playoffs again. They have Leonard, who's going to probably win Defensive Player of the Year, and they have Aldridge, who is one of the finer offensive players on the block. I expect them to win 65. I expect them to get to minimum 2nd round. They'll definitely win a series. But will they win that 2nd series and give the Warriors a run for their money, as we like to say? Yeah, they have a much better shot than the Memphis Grizzlies, than the Oklahoma City Thunder, than the Los Angeles Clippers, because they have experience and they have Greg Popovich.
I'm going to go final prediction. I think I'll have them right around 60 wins. I don't think they'll go much higher. I don't know. I feel like with the new players and then just losing Duncan and then this Aldridge type of drama, they could kind of struggle just a little touch. But I could see them in the Western Conference Finals, especially after not getting there last year. You guys going to watch the Spurs on League Pass?
This is my first team that I'll say no to. To me, I mean, if they're on a good team playing a good, I think the matchup is big for me. Like, I mean, they're not the most exciting team to watch. Like, I love to watch Kawhi play, but to me, like, they just kind of play a boring. Like, it's no disrespect to the Spurs, but I mean, it's kind of boring for me to watch them. Like, they're so consistent and so smart every year, but I mean, I'd rather watch the Trailblazers, to be completely honest. I think that's just coming from an offensive standpoint.
Well, the NBA disagrees with you, Matt. They're on national television 34 times out of their 81 games. 82 games, excuse me. But the thing about the Spurs, and I believe this in the mid-2000s. I believe that in the mid-2000s, this was a boring team. Ginobili, Parker, Duncan. They played like this triangle, or whatever they played. They were throwing it around the post and the elbow. But now they've expanded a little bit. I mean, they shoot the 3 more. Leonard's an exciting guy to watch. Aldridge is a nice guy to watch. I think they've gone away from maybe your older brother's San Antonio Spurs from 2005 when those Piston games were like 86-84 in the finals. So I get it. I get they're black and white. I get they're kind of boring, and like Kawhi Leonard doesn't have like much of a personality. Maybe he's not someone you might want to hang out with, but that guy's got to show something. Give me a fist pump once in a while, would you?
I think he's starting to a touch. I've seen a little bit more out of him last season than I ever saw in the past.
And like you saw with Derrick Rose in the pot, like I'm concerned about him sometimes. I love Kawhi Leonard's game, and he probably means well. He spends a lot of time on basketball, but for crying out loud, give me something, man.
Smile, man.
Yeah, you're in the NBA.
The fun game to play.
Yeah. So with that being said, I hear where you're coming from. I'll tune into them because I love their motion and stuff. Like, I just think they really move it well. But so I'll watch them as much as I can. I think this is not like overwhelming yes, like a Golden State or a Portland or an OKC or even like teams in the Eastern Conference like a Toronto maybe that got people like to get up and down, and Houston. But I think if you like appreciate just like the ball movement a little bit, and then maybe you'll want to tune into a couple more of those.
Yeah, I think I'm probably tuned into a decent amount. I think, like you said, they open it more up offensively. They move the ball more, shoot more threes now. They have some great players. It's going to be interesting to see Gasol in that offense, especially the motion offense with all the passing. So that'll be nice. I mean, one thing that does hurt their league pass value for me is that I don't really take a lot of FanDuel guys from there because you never really know who's going to go off for them. So that kind of hurts them.
Football in a way, they're kind
Exactly.
of running back by committee and etc.
Yeah, they're team before they're like a big time team before we before me type of thing.
Yeah, very true. So, but I'll still definitely catch some, and especially the ones against like the Warriors, the Spurs. The Spurs, the Cavs. So, but that wraps it up for League Pass. All right, let's move on from that though onto the truth. We pick our emoji for the Spurs. What is it, Matthew?
I'm going with the buck teeth and glasses, just from the standpoint of how smart this franchise is.
Basketball nerds over in San Antonio, and there's nothing wrong with that.
Yeah, this is a really, really smart organization, as well run as any organization over the last 20 years in all four major professional sports. So hats off to the Spurs, and good luck to them this season, and enjoyed being with you guys again tonight.
Yeah, for sure. Bonus question. Does LaMarcus Aldridge get traded this season?
Nope. It would be totally out of the order of a Spurs franchise. It's kind of confusing me though as a fan, because you have so many verified reporters and so many high up reporters that don't usually leak stuff that's false or phony. But it's just so unlike the Spurs to do something like this. But I'm gonna stick with my gut and say no.
Pop the God. I call him Pop the God. He doesn't stand. There's one thing he doesn't reason with. As you read in the Old Testament over here, getting religious. Pride and ego, man. Pride and ego. Pop the God does not reason with that. So if Aldridge is going to have an ego, he's not going to be in San Antonio.
That's what I have a feeling that he could end up getting moved.
Yeah.
Especially if Gasol fits in nicely and somebody steps up.
That's true.
So, I mean, they could probably get some nice value for him too. And it would look like such a smart move by the Spurs, you know what I mean? And I feel like Aldridge, he signed before the salary cap jump, so his contract's probably not terrible. So, I could see it as a real possibility. If I was going to put a percent on it, I'd probably go 50.
Yeah, I'm going to go a little lower than that. I'm going to say 25%, because I think he'll see, like, this is an organization that cares more about winning. And I think at this point in his career, he had all that fun in Portland. There's probably not a bar he didn't turn upside down in Portland for the time that he was there. And so I think he wants to be in San Antonio now and win. I think that's where his head's at, but who knows? I'm not LaMarcus Aldridge.
But that wraps it up for the Spurs. Thanks, everybody, for listening. Great show, guys. And on to the top two.